By the time Maya Williams reached table 17, the camera near the stage was already pointed at her. She noticed it before Vanessa Cole, the fiancé of her ex-husband, Richard Harlan, picked up the microphone. The man holding the camera was not filming the reunion banner, the alumni tables, or the donors standing near Richard Harlan. He was filming Maya. Vanessa waited until Maya set her purse on the back of a chair. Then she stepped into the center of the ballroom and spoke clearly into the microphone. "There seems to be a problem with the guest list," Vanessa said. "Maya Williams is not registered for this event." The conversations around the ballroom slowed. A few people turned. Then more followed. Within seconds, Maya was standing in the middle of a room full of old classmates who were no longer pretending not to watch. Richard Harlan stood beside the stage, calm and ready. He did not look surprised. That was what told Maya this was not a mistake. Vanessa looked toward the check-in table. "Erica, please confirm what the tablet shows." A young woman in a black event jacket looked down at the tablet in her hands. She tapped the screen and swallowed before answering. "I'm sorry," Erica said. "The current list does not show Maya Williams." Maya looked at her. "The current list?" Vanessa answered before Erica could. "The official list." "That is not what she said." Richard stepped forward. "Maya, let's not turn this into an argument." "You brought my name into a microphone," Maya said. It was already an argument. Vanessa kept her smile in place. "No one is accusing you of anything yet. We only need to know how you entered a private reunion without being listed. I have an invitation." "Then show it." Maya opened her purse and removed the cream-colored card. She held it up but did not hand it to Vanessa. "Kenwood Academy. 15-year reunion. Palmer House Hilton. Tonight's date. My name is on the envelope." Vanessa glanced at the card, then back at the tablet. "Printed invitations can be copied," several people murmured. Maya turned to Richard. "Is that what this is now? I copied an invitation?" Richard lifted one hand. "I'm asking everyone to stay reasonable. You are not asking anything. Vanessa is accusing me while your camera records it." The cameraman shifted. Vanessa turned her head toward him, and he kept filming. Maya saw it. So did Grace Holloway, standing near the dessert table with her arms folded. Richard lowered his voice, but not enough to keep the front tables from hearing. "Maya, you and I have a history. I understand this might be uncomfortable for you. Do not dress this up as concern." Vanessa stepped closer with the microphone. "Maya, the issue is simple. Your name is not in the system. My invitation says otherwise. The system is what we use for access. Then show the time my name was removed." Vanessa paused. Richard gave a short laugh. "Removed? You hear yourself, don't you?" "I hear you avoiding the question." Vanessa looked back at Erica. The final list was updated before the event. Maya nodded once. "By whom?" Erica looked at Vanessa. Vanessa's voice cooled. "The communications team handled final check-in. Your team, the reunion committee, approved the process. I did not ask about the process. I asked who changed the list." Richard moved between Maya and the check-in table. "Enough. You are not going to interrogate volunteers in front of everyone. I am asking why my invitation is real but my name is gone. And I am saying maybe your name was never there." The room went quiet enough for the microphone to catch Richard's next breath. Maya held his gaze. "Say what you mean." Richard looked around the room first. He wanted witnesses. He always had. "I mean, I used to think you were just a poor girl from South Side who wanted a better life," he said. "I did not think after all these years you would still need to force your way into rooms like this." A few people looked down. One man near the bar stopped recording, then raised his phone again. Vanessa did not lower the microphone. Maya did not answer immediately. She had heard that tone before. In their marriage, Richard had used it in private rooms, company dinners, parking lots, and elevators. He said South Side as if it explained everything he wanted people to believe about her. This time, he had said it in public. Maya put the invitation back into her purse and closed it. "Erica," she said, "open the revision history." Vanessa moved first. "She does not have to do that." Grace Holloway stepped forward. "Actually, she can show the timestamp without exposing guest information." Richard turned toward her. "Grace, this does not concern you." "It does now." Vanessa lowered the microphone slightly. Grace, we are handling it. No, Grace said. You are performing it. The word landed hard. Several heads turned toward the camera. Grace walked to the check-in table. Erica, just tell us the time the final list was uploaded. Erica looked nervous. I don't know if I'm allowed. Grace kept her voice even. Then tell us who gave you the file. Vanessa cut in. This is inappropriate. Maya looked at Vanessa. More inappropriate than calling me a fraud in front of the room? I never used that word. You did not need to. You brought the camera for that. Richard's expression tightened. Maya, you always did this. You turned every situation into a fight. No. I learned to ask for the part you leave out. For the first time, Richard did not answer quickly. Vanessa looked toward the stage, then at the cameraman, then back at the crowd. She seemed to realize the room was no longer fully with her. Richard noticed it too. He took the microphone from Vanessa. Friends, he said, facing the room. I apologize for the interruption. Tonight should not be about old personal issues. It should be about the future. Maya did not look away from him. Richard continued, Harlan Precision Tools is preparing for the most important announcement in its recent history. It affects manufacturing, jobs, investment, and the future of a company my family built over decades. The camera turned fully to him. Vanessa stepped back toward the stage and regained her composure. Grace's phone buzzed. She looked down. Her face changed. She typed a quick reply, then looked at Maya. Maya knew that look. Something had moved. Richard kept speaking. Some people spend years trying to attach themselves to names they did not build. Others protect what their families created. Maya understood the line was meant for her. She also understood he wanted her to react. She did not. Grace's phone buzzed again. This time, she angled the screen away too late. Maya saw the message. They moved it up. Gary is in the packet. Richard looked down from the stage. Maya, he said, you may want to stay for this. Tonight you will finally see what real legacy looks like. Maya placed one hand on her purse and looked straight at him. I'll stay, she said, but not because you invited me. Richard let the room settle before he continued. He knew how to use silence. He had used it in boardrooms, in marriage counseling, and in the final months before he filed for divorce. He waited until people stopped whispering, then looked toward the camera and spoke as if Maya had forced him into an unfortunate interruption. Harlan Precision Tools has been part of this region for decades, he said. My grandfather started with one rented floor and 6 workers. My father expanded it. Now, it is my responsibility to protect that legacy. Vanessa stood near the edge of the stage, watching the camera operator instead of Richard. She gave him a small hand signal, and he adjusted his angle so Maya remained in the shot. Maya noticed it. Grace noticed it too. This was not coverage of an announcement. This was evidence being manufactured. Maya stayed near the front tables. She did not move toward the exit. She did not sit down. If Richard wanted her on camera, she would make sure every word he said was recorded, with her standing still, not running. Richard looked down at her. Some people here may not understand what it takes to protect a company. They think businesses are built on resentment, accusations, or old personal wounds. They are not. They are built on discipline, sacrifice, and names people trust. Maya answered before Vanessa could stop her. Then why did your communications team remove my name from the guest list? A few people turned toward the check-in table again. Richard's face tightened. This is not the time. You made it the time. Vanessa stepped forward with the microphone. Maya, we already reviewed the issue. Your name is not in the system. You reviewed the version you control. That is not true. Then show the earlier list. Vanessa looked toward Erica. Do not touch the tablet. Grace moved closer to the check-in table. That is an odd instruction if the list is clean. Richard pointed toward Grace without leaving the stage. Grace, I respect your profession, but this is not an audit. No, Grace said. It is a public accusation. That makes the timestamp relevant. Vanessa turned the microphone away from Grace. This is a private event. You made it public when you brought local press. The cameraman glanced at Vanessa. She gave him a look, and he kept recording. Maya looked at the man behind the camera. Who hired you? He hesitated. I was brought in to film Mr. Harlan's announcement. By whom? Vanessa answered. By the event media team, Grace said. There was no event media team on the reunion budget. That moved through the room quickly. The alumni committee chair, a retired bank manager named Paul Mercer, stood from a table near the side wall. Vanessa, Paul said, I approved photography for the reception, not a business media package. Vanessa's smile returned too quickly. Richard's office offered to cover the additional cost. It was meant to benefit the reunion. Paul looked at the camera, then at Maya. No one told me there would be a guest list confrontation on film. Richard lowered his chin slightly. Paul, I'm trying to keep order, Maya said. No, you are trying to create a record that makes me look guilty. Richard came down one step from the stage. Guilty of what, Maya? No one used that word until you did. You did not need to use it. You built the scene around it. Vanessa lifted the microphone again. This is becoming disruptive. It was disruptive when you said my name into a microphone. The room was no longer relaxed. People who had been ready to return to their dinners now watched Vanessa with suspicion. A few older alumni near the coffee station whispered about the tablet. Someone asked whether the original guest list had been printed. Someone else said they had seen Maya's name on the RSVP page earlier in the week. Grace heard that and turned. Who saw it? A woman in a burgundy jacket raised her hand halfway. I did. I was checking table assignments on Tuesday. Maya Williams was listed at table 17. Vanessa looked at her. There may have been a duplicate entry. The woman frowned. It was not duplicate. It had her name and meal choice. Maya looked at Vanessa. So, my name was there. Vanessa did not answer. Richard stepped in. This is exactly why I did not want this discussed in front of everyone. Errors happen. People overreact. Old emotions make simple things look intentional. Maya looked straight at him. You called me a poor girl from Southside in front of a camera. That was not an error. If you feel Maya did the right thing by standing up for her dignity, please like this video to show your support for her. And tell us in the comments where you are watching from, because someone living near you may be watching Maya's story with you right now. A quiet sound passed through the room. This time, it did not help Richard. Grace reached for her phone again. She typed quickly, then looked at Erica. Please, do not delete anything. Erica looked frightened. I would never. I believe you, Grace said. I do not believe whoever gave you that file. Vanessa walked to the check-in table. Erica, step away from the tablet. Grace moved at the same time. Do not touch it. Paul Mercer left his table and came between them. He was in his late 60s, careful in his movements, but his voice was clear. Nobody touches that tablet until we know what happened. Richard's tone sharpened. Paul, this is unnecessary. Paul turned to him. What is unnecessary is using my reunion to stage a corporate announcement without full disclosure. Richard took a breath and reset his expression. I understand. Emotions are high, but I will not allow this night to be hijacked by people who want to damage Harlan Precision Tools. Maya caught the change. He had moved from defending the guest list to defending the company. That meant the list was only the first part. Grace's phone buzzed again. She read the message and stepped closer to Maya. They moved the packet up, she said quietly. I saw. Gary is included. Maya did not react in front of the room. How soon? Grace kept her eyes on Richard. Tonight. Maya looked back at the stage. Richard had returned to the microphone. Vanessa stood beside him now, less confident than before but still committed to the performance. Richard spoke to the room again. Since there seems to be confusion, I will be clear. Harlan Precision Tools is not weak. We are not desperate. And we will not be intimidated by outsiders, former spouses, or small firms that profit from corporate distress. Maya heard the target in every word. Vanessa added, tonight's announcement will show everyone the difference between real leadership and personal bitterness. Grace's phone buzzed a third time. She glanced down, then typed only 2 words. Maya saw them before Grace sent the message. They started early. Richard lifted a folder from the podium. In a few minutes, we will present the future of Harlan. And for those who came here hoping to question that future, I suggest you listen carefully. Maya placed her purse on the chair beside her and kept her eyes on the folder. The trap had not ended with the guest list. It had only opened the door. Grace did not speak again until Richard turned back to the crowd and Vanessa moved toward the side of the stage. Maya saw Grace watching the folder in Richard's hand, not his face. That told Maya where the danger was. Paul Mercer stepped closer to the check-in table and kept his hand near the tablet without touching it. "Erica, leave it right there," he said. "No one deletes anything until we sort this out." Erica nodded quickly. "Yes, sir." Vanessa heard him and came back across the room. "Ooh, Paul, with respect, this is not necessary. It became necessary when a guest was publicly accused at my reunion. I did not accuse her. You put her name into a microphone and questioned whether she belonged here." Vanessa's mouth tightened. "I was protecting the event." Grace looked at her. "From a woman with a printed invitation?" Richard stepped off the stage again, folder still in his hand. "Grace, you are making this worse." "No," Grace said. "I am slowing it down enough for people to see it." Maya kept her eyes on Richard. She did not miss the way he held the folder closer to his side after Grace mentioned the tablet. He wanted the room focused on Maya's name, not on his papers. That meant the invitation was only the first move. A man near table 10 leaned toward another classmate and spoke too loudly. "I heard she never got over the divorce." Maya turned her head just enough for him to know she had heard. He looked down at his plate. Richard used the comment anyway. "This is exactly what I meant. Old wounds do not belong in a room like this." Maya answered, without looking away. "Then why did you bring mine to the microphone?" Vanessa stepped between them. "Maya, no one is interested in humiliating you." Maya looked at the camera. "Then, why is he still filming me?" The camera operator lowered the camera again. Vanessa did not correct him this time, but the damage was already clear. Several people had noticed the exchange. The room was no longer ready to accept Vanessa's version of events. Richard saw the shift and changed his tone. "Maya, I know Southside taught you to fight every room you walk into, but this is not that kind of night." The words were calm. That made them worse. Maya felt the room waiting for her to react. She knew what Richard wanted. If she raised her voice, he would turn to the room and say, "See?" If she walked out, Vanessa would have footage of her leaving under suspicion. If she stayed silent, his words would hang there as if they were true. She chose the only answer that did not give him control. "Southside taught me to keep receipts," Maya said. "That is why I still have my invitation." A few people reacted quietly. Someone near the back said, "Fair point." Richard's eyes narrowed. A paper card does not prove anything. It proves more than a tablet no one will show. Grace moved beside Maya. "Come with me for 1 minute." Maya did not want to leave the floor. "Not now." "Now," Grace said quietly. Maya looked at Richard. He smiled as if her stepping away would confirm everything he had said. She turned to Grace. "Fine. 1 minute." They walked toward the hallway near the restrooms, still visible from the ballroom. Maya did not want anyone saying she disappeared. Grace kept her voice low. "The list was changed after 5, Grace said. "Confirmed?" "Not fully." But Erica's screen showed the upload time before Vanessa stopped her. The file was replaced at 5:12 p.m. Maya looked back into the ballroom. Richard was speaking with Vanessa near the podium. Who had access? Vanessa's communications account. Maybe others, but hers is the one tied to the event materials. "So they planned to make me look like I came in under a false name." "Yes." Maya looked toward the camera. "And record it." "Yes." For the first time that night, anger came close to the surface. Maya did not let it out. She had spent years learning the cost of reacting on Richard's schedule. Grace watched her carefully. "You need to stay." "No. I need to leave before they get more footage." "If you leave, tomorrow they post 10 seconds of video and call it proof. They can post whatever they want." "Maya." Grace rarely used that tone. It made Maya stop. Grace held up her phone. "Gary is in the packet." Maya's face changed. "The plant?" "Yes." "What exactly is he doing?" "I do not have the full file yet, but the message says the asset transfer documents were moved into tonight's presentation packet." Maya looked back at Richard. "He is going to announce it here?" "Maybe more than announce it." Maya said nothing. Grace stepped closer. You know what that means. Maya did. The Gary plant was not an empty building on a balance sheet. It was hundreds of workers. Some had been there longer than Richard had been out of college. Some were old enough to worry that a layoff would end their working life for good. Men and women like that did not recover easily from words like transfer, efficiency, and restructuring. Maya looked down at her purse. Inside, it was the folded handkerchief with her mother's initials and the old hospital badge she had never been able to throw away. She did not take them out. She did not need to. She knew why she had carried them tonight. Grace said, "If this were only about you, I would tell you to walk out and let lawyers handle the rest. And now I think he wants the room to applaud before anyone understands who pays for it." Maya breathed once, slowly. He always did like applause before facts. Grace glanced at the ballroom. There is something else. The media crew was not hired for the reunion budget. Paul confirmed it. Richard's office paid for them to film his announcement. And you? Maya looked at her. How long do you think he planned this? Long enough to remove your name after confirmation. Long enough to make sure Vanessa had a microphone. Long enough to put Gary in the packet after business hours. Maya turned back toward the ballroom. Inside, Vanessa had taken the microphone again and was addressing the guests. "We appreciate everyone's patience. Richard has worked very hard to protect jobs and preserve the future of Harlan Precision Tools. It is unfortunate that personal history has created a distraction tonight." Maya heard the phrase "protect jobs" and felt the full shape of the lie. Richard stood beside Vanessa, relaxed again because he thought Maya and Grace were out of the center of the room. He looked toward the hallway and met Maya's eyes. Then he smiled. Maya did not move. For a moment, she remembered the early years of their marriage. Not as a long memory, but as a list of facts. She had worked late. She had paid bills he forgot. She had sat through dinners where he introduced her without mentioning she had helped him get there. She had listened when he told her not to bring up her neighborhood because it made people uncomfortable. Those facts no longer hurt the way they used to. They clarified things. Grace touched Maya's arm lightly. "What do you want to do?" Maya looked at the stage, the camera, the tablet, the folder, and Richard's calm expression. "I want the original guest list preserved," she said. "I want the video from the lobby saved. I want whatever is in that packet copied before he changes it again." Grace nodded. "Already working on it." And Grace, "Yes. If he says Southside one more time, let him. I want everyone to hear exactly what he means when he says it." They returned to the ballroom together. This time Maya did not stand near the edge. She walked back to table 17, picked up her invitation, and placed it flat on the table where anyone could see it. Richard watched her from the stage. "Decided to stay after all?" Maya looked at him. "I decided to listen." Vanessa smiled. "Good. Then maybe we can continue without more interruptions." Grace stood a few feet behind Maya, phone in hand, eyes on the folder. Richard lifted the packet and faced the room again. "As I was saying, Harlan Precision Tools is entering a new phase. Some difficult decisions are necessary, but real leaders do not run from difficult decisions." Maya looked at Grace. Grace gave the smallest nod. The fight was no longer about a missing name on a guest list. It was about what Richard was preparing to do before anyone in that ballroom understood the cost. Richard opened the folder and removed the first page with deliberate care. Vanessa moved to the side of the podium and gave the cameraman a clear view of him. The alumni banner was still behind him, but the reunion no longer felt like the reason everyone had gathered there. "Before we continue," Richard said, "I want to thank the reunion committee, the donors, and everyone who still believes that local companies matter." Paul Mercer did not clap. A few people did, mostly out of habit, and the sound faded quickly. Richard noticed but kept going. Harlan Precision Tools started in a rented industrial space outside Chicago. 6 workers, 2 machines, 1 family name. My grandfather believed American manufacturing could feed families, build cities, and give working people a reason to get up before sunrise. Maya listened from table 17. She did not sit. Her invitation lay flat on the table beside her purse. Anyone who wanted to see it could see it. Vanessa watched the room, not Richard. Her attention moved from Paul to Grace to the camera and back again. She was checking whether the story was still under control. It was not. Richard turned a page. In recent years, our industry has faced pressure from outside firms. They come in with spreadsheets, cut up companies, sell off assets, and leave communities to deal with the damage. Maya heard the accusation clearly. He still had not said her name. He did not need to. Vanessa had already placed her in the frame as an intruder. Now Richard was placing her in the story as a threat. Grace stepped closer to Maya and kept her voice low. He is setting you up as the reason for whatever he announces. Maya did not look away from the stage. I know. Do you want me to interrupt? Not yet. Richard looked down at her. Some people think history is something they can walk into after others have built it. But legacy is not taken. Legacy is protected. Maya raised her voice just enough. Then protect the workers, Richard. Start there. The room shifted again. Richard smiled without warmth. Workers are exactly why I am standing here. Then say Gary by name. Vanessa stepped toward the microphone. Maya, please do not interrupt. Maya looked at her. You did not mind interruption when my name was the announcement. Paul Mercer spoke from near the check-in table. Let him answer. If Gary is in the packet, people should know what that means. Richard turned to Paul. With respect, Paul. Business decisions cannot be explained in one sentence at a reunion. Then maybe they should not be signed at one. Paul said. That caught the room. Vanessa moved quickly. No one said anything is being signed tonight. Grace looked at her phone again. Are you sure about that? Vanessa ignored her and faced the guests. What Richard is trying to share is good news. Harlan Precision Tools is preparing for growth, investment, and long-term stability. Maya asked. For whom? Richard's patience thinned. For the company. That is not the same answer. He looked at her for several seconds. You have not worked inside this company. You do not know what it takes to carry responsibility at this level. Maya answered calmly. I know responsibility does not need a camera crew. The cameraman lowered his eyes but kept filming. Richard placed both hands on the podium. This is exactly the attitude that makes companies vulnerable. Personal resentment, dressed up as concern. Grace stepped forward. No, Richard. A missing guest name, a changed check-in file, and a rushed packet are not personal resentment. They are questions. Vanessa turned sharply. Grace. Enough. No, Grace said. Not until we know who changed the list and why Gary was moved into tonight's materials. Richard closed the folder halfway. You keep mentioning Gary, as if you understand what is at stake. Maya spoke before Grace could. Hundreds of jobs are at stake. Health insurance is at stake. Pensions are at stake. Mortgage payments are at stake. That is enough to understand. Several older alumni nodded. They understood those words. They had lived through layoffs, plant closures, retirement scares, medical bills, and letters from companies that called bad news a transition. Richard saw that reaction and adjusted again. No one is abandoning workers. That accusation is offensive. Then say the plant is safe, Maya said. He paused. The pause did more damage than any answer could have. Vanessa stepped in. No responsible executive makes public promises before all options are reviewed. Maya turned to her. But he can publicly accuse me before the facts are reviewed? Vanessa did not answer. Richard looked toward the camera, then back at the room. I will not let this evening become a trial run by people who have spent years outside the real work. Maya's expression did not change. I have worked since I was 16. I am talking about corporate leadership. I know what you are talking about. Richard leaned slightly toward the microphone. Do you? Grace touched Maya's arm once, a warning not to take the bait. Maya stayed measured. Yes, you are talking about titles. I am talking about people. The words reached the back tables. A woman near the coffee station whispered, She's right, and did not lower her voice enough to hide it. Richard turned a page in the folder and forced the program forward. Tonight, Harlan Precision Tools is announcing a strategic partnership that will place this company on stronger financial ground. This partnership will help us compete, modernize, and protect the name my family built. Grace's phone buzzed again. She read the message, then showed Maya only the top line. Packet includes transfer summary. Maya kept her face still. Richard continued. There will be difficult choices. Real leaders do not hide from that. They do not let emotion overrule math. They do not confuse nostalgia with strategy. Maya looked at the folder. Is Gary listed as an asset? In that summary, Richard's eyes fixed on her. You are out of line. Is it? Vanessa took the microphone from its stand. Maya, if you continue disrupting this event, hotel security can escort you out. Paul immediately said, no one is escorting her anywhere. Vanessa looked stunned. Paul, she has a valid invitation on the table, and I have not seen one answer about why the list changed. Richard's voice dropped. Paul, do not put yourself in the middle of this. I was put in the middle when my committee's event was used for something I did not approve. There was no applause, but the room's attention moved further away from Richard. He felt it. Vanessa felt it. Maya saw both of them understand the same thing at once. The guest list trap had failed to remove her before the business announcement began. Richard straightened. Fine. Since everyone wants clarity, I will provide it. Harlan Precision Tools has been approached by a major investment group. This group understands manufacturing, understands scale, and understands that weak management is not saved by sentiment. Grace whispered. He is going there now. Maya answered quietly. Let him. Richard lifted the folder again. In a few moments, I will introduce the next phase of our company's future. I will also explain why certain assets must be reviewed, including facilities that no longer support our long-term direction. Maya did not need him to say more. The Gary plant was in danger. Richard had not brought the packet to inform the room. He had brought it to create public pressure before anyone could ask the right questions. Vanessa returned to the stage and stood beside him, but she no longer looked certain. Richard looked down at Maya one more time. You wanted answers. Stay close. You are about to hear them. Maya picked up her invitation from the table and put it back into her purse. Then she stood where the camera could see her clearly. Grace moved behind her, phone ready. Paul stayed beside the tablet. Richard had wanted Maya trapped in the room under suspicion. Instead, she was still there. The original guest list was being preserved, and every word he said from this point forward was being recorded by the same camera he had brought to use against her. Richard tapped the folder once on the podium, then looked past Maya to the rest of the room. Over the last 18 months, Harlan Precision Tools has been approached by several firms, he said. Some were serious. Some were opportunistic. Some wanted to take advantage of temporary pressure in the manufacturing sector. But tonight, I can say this company is close to securing a strategic rescue partnership with a private investment group that understands American industry. Vanessa moved to the side table and handed a stack of printed statements to 2 volunteers. Please make sure the press gets those first, she said quietly, but not quietly enough for Grace to miss it. Grace watched one of the volunteers pass a copy to the cameraman. Then she looked at Maya. Maya did not move. She wanted to see how far Richard would go on his own. Richard turned another page. This investment group has reviewed our assets, our production lines, and our future growth potential. They believe, as I do, that Harlan has been held back by fear. Too many people in this industry treat hard decisions like moral failures. They confuse sentiment with leadership. A man at one of the front tables raised his hand slightly. Richard, are you saying the company is being sold? Richard smiled. No, Tom. I am saying the company is being strengthened. Maya spoke from table 17. That did not answer his question. Richard looked down at her. It answered it, clearly enough, for people who understand business. Vanessa stepped in before Maya could reply. What Richard means is that Harlan is entering a partnership, not surrendering control. Grace looked down. Maya heard the word control and watched Richard's face. He did not correct Vanessa. He also did not repeat the word himself. Richard continued. We have watched small firms circle companies like ours, waiting for one difficult quarter, one missed projection, one board disagreement. They call it restructuring. I call it profiting from distress. Maya knew the line was aimed at her. Vanessa made sure the camera caught Maya when Richard said it. Maya kept her face still. Richard leaned closer to the microphone. Some of these firms claim they are saving jobs. In reality, they buy influence, cut what they do not understand. and walk away before the damage reaches the families who depend on those paychecks. Name one, Maya said. Richard paused. Excuse me? You said some of these firms damage families. Name one. Vanessa stepped forward. Maya, this is not a hearing. No, Maya said. It is a business announcement being filmed after I was accused of sneaking into the room. If Richard is going to make claims, he can name what he means. Richard gave a controlled laugh. I do not need to name anyone. The pattern is common. That is convenient. Paul Mercer looked at the printed statement in his hand. Richard, this says the investment group will assist with strategic asset review. What assets? Richard turned toward him. Standard language. Paul read from the page. It also says selected facilities may be transitioned, consolidated, or released depending on performance. The room quieted again. Maya looked at Grace. Grace had already seen it. Her thumbs moved quickly across her phone. Richard raised one hand. That is normal in any serious financial review. No one should read more into it than necessary. Maya said, Does that review include Gary? Richard's expression held, but his eyes changed. Vanessa answered first. Specific facility discussions are confidential. So, yes, Maya said. I said confidential. You said enough. Richard closed the folder halfway. The Gary facility has been under review for years. Anyone familiar with the numbers knows that. Are the workers familiar with the review? Richard did not answer immediately. Maya took one step away from the table. Have they been told their plant is in tonight's packet? Vanessa's voice sharpened. You do not have standing to ask that. I have enough standing to ask whether hundreds of people are being discussed in a ballroom without being told. Richard's face hardened. You are trying to create panic. No. I am asking for facts before you use applause to cover them. The cameraman shifted his weight. Vanessa looked at him, then back at Richard. She seemed to want him to move faster, but Richard was not used to being pushed off his own script. Grace walked toward the hallway. Phone pressed to her ear. Maya saw her go but did not follow. Grace needed space, and Maya needed Richard talking. Richard resumed. Let me be clear. Harlan Precision Tools is not closing tonight. No one is firing anyone tonight. What we are doing is preparing the company to survive in a market that punishes weakness. A woman from the back asked, Then why announce it here? Richard looked annoyed. Because many of the people in this room grew up with this company. Their parents worked with us. Their families used our products. This is a community story, Paul said. It was not on the reunion program. Vanessa replied. It was added as a donor update. Paul looked at her. By whom? Vanessa did not answer. Richard stepped in again. By me. I offered to underwrite part of this reunion because I believe alumni should support each other. I did not expect that generosity to be questioned. Maya said. Generosity does not require a camera crew. Richard looked directly at her. Neither does bitterness. But you brought plenty. Several people reacted, but no one laughed. Maya nodded slowly. There it is. What? The reason you needed the guest list changed first. If I asked questions after being labeled an intruder, people might ignore the questions. Richard leaned on the podium. You give yourself too much importance. No. You gave me the camera angle. Vanessa turned away, irritated. Grace returned from the hallway and stopped at Maya's side. Her voice was low. Lead counsel is checking the 5 o'clock filing. Maya kept her eyes forward. Do they have confirmation? Not yet. They are pulling the final notice. How long? Minutes, maybe less. Maya nodded once. Richard noticed their exchange. If you and Grace need time to invent another accusation, I can pause. Grace answered before Maya could. Do not pause on our account. Richard smiled. Good. Then let's proceed. Vanessa handed him a second folder, thinner than the first. He placed it on the podium, but kept one hand over the cover. This partnership, he said, will give Harlan the ability to eliminate dead weight, protect core operations, and compete at a national level. We will no longer be held hostage by outdated facilities or emotional arguments. Maya asked, Is Gary dead weight? Richard looked at her. Gary is a facility. It is a workplace. It is an asset. It is people. Richard's voice lowered. That is why you never understood leadership. You cannot make decisions because you turn every number into a face. Maya held his gaze. Someone should. The room stayed quiet. Grace's phone buzzed again. She read the message and closed her hand around the phone. Maya did not look at her. Grace? Grace kept her voice almost flat. The filing is being reviewed now. The packet still includes Gary. And Richard's office sent the press release at 6:12. Maya looked toward Vanessa. Before I arrived. Grace nodded. Before you arrived. Richard heard enough to understand the direction, but not enough to know what Grace had learned. He lifted the thinner folder. In a few minutes, he said. We will present the investment group's letter of intent. After that, no one in this room will have to wonder whether Harlan Precision Tools is still in strong hands. Maya placed both hands on the back of the chair in front of her. Richard believed he was building toward proof of power. Maya could see something else forming. The more he spoke, the more he tied himself to every document on that stage. Vanessa stepped forward before Richard could open the thinner folder. She touched his arm, leaned close, and whispered something that made him pause. Richard looked at her, then toward the camera, then back at Maya. Before we present the letter of intent, Vanessa said, I think everyone deserves to understand why tonight's disruption matters. Maya looked at Grace. Here it comes. Grace kept her phone in one hand. Do not react until we see what they play. Vanessa picked up a small remote from the side table. The large screen behind Richard changed from the Harlan Precision Tools logo to a paused video from the hotel lobby. Maya recognized herself at the front desk, standing beside a luggage cart and speaking to the clerk. The image was clear enough to show her face, her purse, and the invitation in her hand. It did not show what the clerk had said before that moment. It did not show Maya asking why her name badge read vendor guest. It did not show the clerk calling the event office twice and receiving no answer. Vanessa faced the room. This is from earlier tonight. Maya approached the front desk after the check-in issue began. We are not trying to embarrass anyone, but we cannot ignore what the footage shows. Maya said, play the whole thing. Vanessa did not look at her. We are showing the relevant part. That means you cut it. Richard spoke into the microphone. Maya, please, let people watch. Vanessa pressed play. On the screen, Maya appeared to lean closer to the front desk and say, my name should be there. Check again. The clip jumped. The clerk looked uncomfortable. Maya said, then call someone who can correct it. The clip jumped again. Maya was shown taking the invitation back and turning away. The video stopped. Several people began whispering. One man near the side wall said, that does look bad. Another woman answered, it looks cut. Vanessa heard both. The footage simply shows that there were concerns before Maya entered the ballroom. Maya looked at the screen. It shows pieces. Richard shook his head. This is what I meant. No matter what is shown, you call it unfair. Because it is edited. Vanessa turned to the cameraman. Keep recording. Grace moved toward the side of the stage. Who gave you that clip? Vanessa kept her voice controlled. The hotel provided it. Paul Mercer stepped away from the check-in table. Hotels do not usually hand over lobby security footage to a guest during an event. Vanessa answered quickly. It was shared with the event team because of a security concern. Paul looked at her. By whom? Vanessa did not answer. Maya looked at the front desk clerk on the frozen image. That woman told me my badge had been printed wrong. She was trying to help, Richard said. Then why did she look uncomfortable? Because your team put her in the middle of something you created. Richard's expression tightened. Again, you blame everyone else. No. I am naming the steps. First, my name disappears from the list. Then a camera is pointed at me. Then you call me a poor girl from Southside. Now Vanessa plays a cut video and calls it relevant. Vanessa lifted her chin. I did not cut the video, Grace said. Then you will not mind asking the hotel to preserve the original. Vanessa looked toward Richard. Richard took the microphone back. We are not going to turn this reunion into a technical review of video files. Grace replied. You turned it into one. When you used the file as evidence. That got a reaction from the room. A few people nodded. Someone near the back said, she's right. Richard looked at the audience and softened his tone. Friends, I understand this feels uncomfortable. It is uncomfortable for me too. Maya and I were married. No one here needs to pretend that history does not exist. But I will not let personal history interfere with Harlan's future. Maya knew what he was doing. He was moving the issue away from the video and back to his company. He wanted the room to feel tired of the conflict. He wanted them ready for his announcement. Grace stepped closer to Maya. I texted the hotel manager. They have the full lobby footage. They will not release it to me yet, but they will preserve it. Good. There is more. The clip Vanessa played was exported from a phone, not from the hotel system. Maya looked at her. Are you sure? Yes. Wrong timestamp format. Wrong frame size. Maya turned back toward Vanessa. That clip did not come directly from hotel security. Vanessa answered too fast. You would not know that. Grace would. Grace held up her phone. The hotel's system does not watermark footage that way. Someone recorded or exported a portion of it. Paul said, Vanessa, I need you to stop using that screen. Vanessa's eyes widened. Paul, this is Richard's announcement. This is my committee's event. Stop using the screen until we know what we are looking at. Richard stepped between Vanessa and Paul. Paul, I paid for the screen package. Paul's expression changed. That does not make it yours. The room reacted quietly. Richard looked around and saw more doubt than support. He needed control back. Maya could see the decision forming before he spoke. Fine, Richard said. We will stop discussing the video. But let me be very clear. This is exactly what certain people do. They create confusion, question every process, and then claim they are the ones protecting workers. Maya answered, processes deserve questions when they are used to smear someone. Richard ignored her and lifted the thinner folder again. Harlan Precision Tools cannot survive if we let sentiment lead. We need capital, speed, and discipline. That is why the investment group involved in this partnership is prepared to move quickly. Grace's phone buzzed. She looked down, then typed a message with both thumbs. Maya saw the tension in her hands. What? Grace kept her eyes on the screen. Lead counsel says the letter of intent references a Delaware entity, but the operating address routes through Texas. Shell structure? Possible. Vanessa had moved back to Richard's side. She spoke into the microphone again, trying to sound calm. The investment group has requested discretion until the appropriate moment. That is normal. In private transactions. Maya asked, is discretion the word you are using for secrecy? Richard gave her a hard look. You are out of your depth. You keep saying that, but you keep avoiding simple questions. Because your questions are not simple. They are loaded. Then unload them. Name the group. Richard looked down at the folder. That will be done at the proper time. Paul crossed his arms. You were ready to play lobby footage, but not ready to name the people buying into your company? Richard's patience was slipping. No one is buying into anything without proper review. Grace said quietly, that is not what the packet says. Vanessa heard her. You do not have that packet. Grace looked at her. Not yet. That was the first time Vanessa looked genuinely worried. Maya kept her voice level. Richard, if this partnership is real and clean, there is no reason to hide behind edited footage, changed lists, and vague terms. Richard walked to the edge of the stage. Do not lecture me about clean. You came here tonight looking for a fight. I came here with an invitation. You came here with resentment. Maya shook her head. No. Resentment would have made me leave and let you sign whatever is in that folder. Richard froze for a moment. He had not expected that. Grace's phone buzzed again. She read the message and stepped back, putting more distance between herself and Vanessa. Maya did not ask this time. She knew Grace would speak when she could. Richard returned to the podium. We are moving forward. Vanessa nodded to the cameraman. The red light stayed on. Maya looked from the edited video frozen on the side monitor to the folder in Richard's hand. He had tried to make her look dishonest before he introduced the deal. Now the room had seen enough to doubt the accusation, but not enough to stop him. That was the danger. Doubt alone would not protect Gary. Doubt would not protect the workers. Doubt would not stop a signature. Richard opened the folder again and began turning pages. Grace leaned close and whispered, the original footage is preserved. The guest list file is preserved. Now we need him to keep talking. Maya kept her eyes on Richard. He will. Richard turned the first page in the folder and pointed to the screen behind him. Vanessa clicked the remote, and a slide appeared with the words, Operational, Review, and Strategic Facility Planning. Under that title were 3 bullet points: Modernization, Consolidation, and Asset Release. Maya read the words once and looked at Richard. Asset Release, she said. That is the phrase you are using for Gary? Richard did not answer her directly. Every major company reviews its facilities. That is responsible management. Paul Mercer adjusted his glasses and looked at the printed statement again. Richard, is Gary listed in the release category? Vanessa answered before Richard could. Paul, those categories are preliminary. That was not my question. Richard kept his voice controlled. The Gary facility has been underperforming for years. Outdated equipment, high maintenance costs, declining margins. This is not new. Maya stepped away from table 17. How many employees? Richard looked irritated. Maya, how many? He glanced at the folder. That number changes, Grace said. The last internal headcount was 312. Several people reacted. A man in a gray jacket near the front table turned to his wife and whispered something. Another woman near the coffee station covered her mouth for a second, then lowered her hand. Maya kept her eyes on Richard. 312 people. How many know their plant is being discussed tonight? Richard closed the folder halfway. No decisions have been finalized. Then why is it in a packet prepared for press? Vanessa stepped in. Because the press release concerns the company's future, not individual employees. Maya turned to her. Those employees are the company's future. Richard gave a short laugh. That sounds nice in a speech. It does not solve negative cash flow. It does not excuse hiding the truth either. You have no idea what I have hidden or not hidden. Grace lifted her phone slightly. Then you will not mind saying whether Gary workers received formal notice of asset review. Richard looked at her. Grace, you are not counsel here. No. I am asking a basic question in a room where you chose to discuss a business transaction. Vanessa looked toward Paul. This is getting out of hand. Paul did not move. It got out of hand when you used my reunion to corner a former classmate and then brought a factory sale into the program. Richard's voice sharpened. No one said sale. Maya pointed to the slide. Asset release. That can mean several things. Then define it. Richard looked across the room, searching for the safest answer. It can mean transition, consolidation, partnership, or sale if necessary. Maya nodded. So, sale is on the table. A long pause followed. Richard chose a calmer tone. Responsible leaders keep options on the table. Maya answered. Workers deserve to know when their lives are on the table. That line reached people differently. The older alumni understood it first. Many of them had spent decades in offices, hospitals, schools, factories, post offices, county buildings, small shops, and city departments. They knew what it meant when management used soft words for hard news. The man at table 6 raised his hand. My brother-in-law worked at Gary. Retired 6 years ago. That plant had union contracts. Richard looked annoyed but answered. Some legacy agreements remain. Legacy? The man repeated. You mean pensions? Vanessa said. This is not a labor meeting. Maya did not look at Vanessa. It should have been before this packet came here. Richard turned another page. Let me explain something clearly. If Harlan does not modernize, the entire company is at risk. That means more than one facility. That means suppliers, customers, management, everyone, Grace said. But the first people you plan to cut were not management. Richard looked at her. You do not know that. Then show the reduction plan. Vanessa snapped. There is no reduction plan being presented tonight. Maya looked at the folder under Richard's hand. Is there one inside that packet? Richard's hand stayed on the cover. Confidential. Convenient word. You use suspicion when you lack facts. Maya took a step closer to the stage. No. I use questions when a man who already changed a guest list starts talking about confidential plans for 312 workers. The room was with her now. Not fully, but enough. Richard knew it. Vanessa knew it. The cameraman knew it too. because he stopped trying to frame Maya alone and started capturing the room. Richard looked toward him. "Stay on me." The cameraman adjusted. Grace saw that and typed something fast. Maya asked, "Why tonight, Richard?" "Because tonight is a meaningful night for this community." "No. Why tonight? Why not Monday morning at Harlan headquarters? Why not after speaking to the plant manager? Why not after notifying union representatives? Why not after the board signs off in a proper meeting?" Richard's mouth tightened. "You are making assumptions. Then, correct them." Vanessa moved nearer to Richard. "Maya, your tone is inappropriate." Maya turned to her. "A man is discussing job losses in a ballroom, and my tone is the problem?" A few people murmured. Vanessa heard it and went quiet. Richard placed the folder flat on the podium. "The board is aware of the review." Grace looked up quickly. "All of them?" Richard's eyes went to her. "Excuse me?" Grace took one step forward. "You said the board is aware. Are all board members aware Gary was moved into tonight's packet?" Vanessa said. "Grace, stop." Grace did not stop. "Are they aware the press release went out at 6:12? Are they aware the guest list file was changed at 5:12? Are they aware that tonight's materials include an asset transfer summary?" Richard's face changed. "Not much, but enough." Maya noticed. "So did Paul." Richard spoke slowly. "You are throwing around pieces of information without context." Grace looked at her phone. "Then, provide the context." Richard ignored her and turned back to the guests. "People who have never carried payroll often talk as if every job can be protected forever. I wish that were true. It is not. Real leadership means accepting reality," Maya said. "Reality includes the people who will get the letters." Richard looked down at her. "There are no letters. Yet. Do not put words in my mouth. Then stop leaving them in your folder." The room reacted again. This time, Richard did not recover as quickly. A woman near the front, older than most of the class, stood slowly. Maya recognized her as Mrs. Darlene Price, a former cafeteria supervisor who had been invited as an honorary guest. Her late husband had worked in a machine shop for 30 years. "My husband got one of those letters in 2009, Mrs. Price said. "They called it a transition. He called it losing his health insurance before his surgery." No one spoke over her. Richard lowered his voice. "Mrs. Price, I am sorry your family went through that." She looked at him for a long moment. "Then do not dress it up." That was the first direct rebuke from someone Richard could not easily dismiss as bitter, jealous, or uninformed. Maya looked at Mrs. Price, then back at Richard. "Say Gary clearly. Say what is being reviewed." Richard took the microphone from the stand and stepped away from the podium. "Fine. The Gary facility is part of a strategic review. The investment group has identified it as a non-core asset. No final public decision has been made tonight." Grace whispered, "Non-core asset. That matches the packet language." Maya heard her but kept her focus on Richard. "And if the group recommends release?" Richard answered too quickly. "Then we consider the recommendation. Before telling the workers? Through the proper channels. When?" Richard did not answer. Vanessa tried to regain control. "We are moving forward with the presentation." Paul said, "Not until the committee understands whether this event is being used to announce a plant sale." Richard stared at Paul. "You are overstepping." Paul folded his arms. "No, I am catching up." Grace's phone buzzed again. She read the message and moved closer to Maya. "What is it?" Maya asked. Grace kept her voice low. "The Delaware entity has no operating staff listed. Texas address traces to a mail office. Lead counsel is asking for more time." Maya did not show surprise. Richard saw them speaking and raised his voice. "Enough side conversations. If you have accusations, make them out loud." Maya looked at him. "Not yet." That answer unsettled him more than an accusation would have. Richard returned to the podium and lifted the thin folder. "Then listen carefully, because what comes next will show exactly why Harlan needs partners with courage, not critics with old grudges." Maya looked at the screen, then at the packet, then at Grace's phone. Gary was no longer a rumor. It was on the stage, in the paperwork, and in Richard's own words. Richard placed the thin folder on top of the larger packet and opened it to a page marked Confidential summary. Vanessa moved closer to him, but her attention stayed on Grace. She had stopped smiling for the camera. Now she was watching the phone in Grace's hand. The investment group has requested confidentiality until the letter of intent is formally acknowledged, Richard said. That is standard in private transactions. It protects both sides from speculation. Maya looked at the screen. Then, why announce it in front of local press? Richard did not look at her. Because the existence of the partnership is not confidential. The finer points are, Grace said. The name should not be a finer point. Vanessa stepped away from the podium. Grace, you are interrupting a private corporate matter. You brought the corporate matter into a reunion ballroom. Richard looked at the audience. This is what happens when people hear a few business terms and think they understand a transaction. Maya answered. Then explain it plainly. He turned toward her. Gladly. Harlan, Precision Tools has received a letter of intent from a private capital group interested in supporting our long-term restructuring. What is the group's name? Richard hesitated only slightly. North Point Strategic Capital. Grace typed it into her phone immediately. Vanessa noticed. Grace, whatever you are doing, stop. No. The answer was quiet, but it cut through the room. Paul Mercer stepped closer to Grace. What are you checking? Basic public records, Grace said. Entity registration, business address, principals if available. Richard laughed once. You will not find much. Private capital is called private for a reason. Grace did not look up. Private does not mean invisible. Vanessa turned toward the guests. This is inappropriate. Richard is trying to share important news, and Grace is running an amateur investigation from her phone. Grace kept reading. North Point Strategic Capital LLC. Formed in Delaware 8 months ago. Richard nodded. Many investment groups form entities in Delaware. That part is not unusual, Grace said. The mailing address routes to a commercial mail office in Dallas. Vanessa's face changed. Richard answered quickly. Again, not unusual. Many firms use registered agents and satellite offices. Grace kept scrolling. No operating website. No listed executive team. No public investment history. No phone number except a forwarding service. Richard's voice hardened. You are reading incomplete information. I agree, Grace said. That is the problem. A few people near the back began searching on their own phones. Vanessa saw it and turned to the camera operator. Stop filming the audience. The camera stayed on Richard. Maya looked at Vanessa. Why? This is not a public record seminar. No, Maya said. It is a room full of people watching a company ask for trust without giving names that can be checked. Richard pointed to the folder. The legal documents have been reviewed. By whose counsel? Grace asked. Our counsel. Company counsel or your personal counsel? Richard did not answer right away. Paul noticed. That is a fair question. Richard looked at Paul with irritation. Company counsel has been informed, Grace said. That is not the same as reviewed. Vanessa crossed the stage and spoke lower, but the microphone still caught part of it. Richard. Move to the next section. Maya heard it. Why the rush? Vanessa turned. Because this has become hostile. It became hostile when you called me a security concern. Richard placed both hands on the podium. Enough. Grace, you can search whatever you want. It does not change the financial condition of Harlan. It does not change the fact that companies need capital. It does not change the fact that Gary has been dragging down margins. Maya stepped forward. Say what North Point gets. Richard stared at her. What? If North Point is saving Harlan, what do they get in return? That is not your concern. It is the concern of anyone who may lose a job because of it. Vanessa said, No one is losing a job tonight. Maya looked at the slide. Then remove Gary from the packet. Richard picked up the thin folder. You do not get to dictate terms in a company you do not control. Grace's phone buzzed again. She read, then looked at Maya without speaking. Maya understood she had something. Richard saw the look. Say it, Grace. You clearly want to. Grace lifted her eyes. North Point's registered manager is Bexley Administrative Services. Vanessa looked away. Grace continued. Bexley appears on 2 other entities tied to consulting contracts with Harlan vendors. Richard's expression did not break, but his hand moved from the folder to the edge of the podium. Paul asked, "What does that mean?" "It may mean nothing," Grace said. "Or it may mean the same people are being used to move money through several companies." Richard's voice sharpened. "Careful." Grace looked at him. "I am being careful. That is why I said may." Maya watched Vanessa. She was no longer looking at the guests. She was looking at Richard, as if she had just heard something he had not explained to her. "Vanessa," Maya said, "did you know North Point was linked to those entities?" Vanessa recovered quickly. "I am not involved in legal structuring, but you prepared the press materials. I prepared communications based on information provided." "By Richard?" Vanessa did not answer. Richard stepped in. "Leave her out of it." Maya looked at him. "You put her at the microphone." The room reacted quietly again. A man near table 4 spoke up. "Richard, if North Point is real, why not have a representative here?" Richard looked toward him. "Because this is a preliminary announcement," Paul said. "Then why include a letter of intent?" Richard's control slipped. "Because people keep demanding proof," Grace said. "Proof usually makes things clearer. This is making them worse." Richard opened the folder and pulled out a page. "Here is what matters. North Point Strategic Capital is prepared to provide a financing path that lets Harlan reduce exposure, consolidate inefficient operations, and focus on high-value production. That is leadership." "My day," Maya asked. "Does reduce exposure mean moving assets out before creditors see the full books?" Richard looked at her slowly. "You have no idea what you are implying." "I am asking what you are doing." "You are implying fraud." "I am asking if North Point is a buyer, a lender, or a place to hide assets." Vanessa inhaled sharply. "Maya," Richard pointed at her. "You just crossed a line." Maya's voice stayed even. "Then answer and move me back across it." No one spoke for a moment. Grace's phone buzzed again. She looked down, read the message, and typed back fast. Richard saw the movement. "Who are you texting?" Grace put the phone at her side. "Someone who knows how to read a filing faster than I can," Vanessa said. "This is harassment." "No," Paul said. "This is what happens when a business announcement starts with a false guest list problem and moves into a plant review no one approved for this program." Richard turned on Paul. "You keep saying approved, as if this is your company." Paul did not back down. "No, but it is my event." Vanessa reached for the microphone again. "We need to return to the prepared presentation." Maya looked at the screen. "Prepared by whom? Harlan's board? Company counsel? North Point? Or Vanessa's communications office?" Richard's face set. "You are trying to make confusion look like evidence." "No," Maya said. "You made confusion. Grace is finding evidence." Grace looked up. "There is another issue." Richard spoke through his teeth. "Of course there is. The letter references an escrow account." Vanessa looked at Richard. This time, she did not hide it. Grace continued. "The receiving bank is not named in the summary. The account beneficiary is listed only by initials." Paul asked, "Is that normal?" Grace said, "Not in a summary meant to reassure people." Richard took the page back and put it into the folder. "You are not authorized to review these materials." "You handed printed statements to half the room," Grace said. "You put terms on a public screen. You cannot call it confidential only when someone reads the wrong line." Maya looked at Richard. "Who benefits from the escrow?" Richard did not answer. "Richard," she said, "who benefits?" He leaned toward the microphone. "Harlan benefits when people like you stop trying to weaken it." Maya shook her head. "That is not an answer. It is the only answer you deserve." The room went silent again, but this time it was not against Maya. The insult had landed wrong. Even Vanessa looked uneasy. Grace stepped closer to Maya and lowered her voice. "Lead counsel says the entity may be tied to a shell structure. They are pulling the final ownership chain." "How long?" "Soon. But we need more than public records." Maya looked at the folder. "Then let him open more." Richard heard none of that, or pretended not to. He turned to the crowd with renewed force. "I will not let this company be damaged by people who do not understand what is at stake. North Point is prepared to move quickly. Harlan is prepared to move quickly. And if some assets must be released to protect the whole company, that is a decision I am willing to make. Maya looked at him. Even if those assets are people? Richard answered immediately. Assets are not people. Mrs. Price, still standing near the front, said, That is the problem. Richard looked at her, then at the rest of the room. He seemed to realize too late that his own words had done more damage than any question Maya had asked. Vanessa reached for the remote, but her hand was unsteady. The next slide appeared behind them. Proposed transfer structure. Grace took one look at it and raised her phone. Do not change that slide, she said. Richard turned. Why? Grace looked at Maya, then back to the screen. Because now we can see where the money is supposed to go. Vanessa lowered the remote but did not change the slide. The words proposed transfer structure remained on the screen, followed by boxes, arrows, and initials that most people in the ballroom could not read fast enough to understand. Grace could. Maya could read enough to know Richard had not expected anyone in that room to ask questions. Paul Mercer stepped closer to the screen. Grace, what are we looking at? Grace did not answer immediately. She took a picture of the slide and sent it from her phone. It appears to show money moving from North Point through an escrow account before selected assets are released. Richard snapped the folder shut. It appears to show nothing without context. Then provide the context, Maya said. Richard pointed at her. You are not part of this transaction. Then why did you build the first half of the night around me? Vanessa stepped between them from the side of the stage. Because you made yourself part of it, by showing up under questionable circumstances. Maya turned to the room. I showed up with an invitation. The original list was changed after 5. The video was edited. Now Richard is trying to move a plant into a transaction with a company no one can verify. Those are not separate events. Richard laughed, but the sound was forced. Listen to yourself. You came here ready to accuse me. No, Maya said. I came here hoping I would not have to. His eyes moved to her purse. Still carrying that old thing? The room heard him. Vanessa heard him. Grace heard him and looked at Maya. Maya did not look down. Yes, Richard nodded toward it. Let me guess. Another prop? Something from your mother? Something meant to make everyone feel sorry for you? Maya's expression stayed calm, but something in her changed. Until then, she had kept Ruth Williams out of the room. Richard had brought her in. Grace said quietly, Maya, you do not have to answer that. Maya opened the purse anyway. She did not rush. She removed a small folded handkerchief, then a worn photograph with a crease through one corner. She held it in her hand for a moment before turning it toward Richard. Do you recognize him? Richard looked at the photograph without stepping closer. Should I? Samuel Williams. My father. A few people leaned forward. Mrs. Price, still near the front, took one careful step closer. Maya continued. He worked contract maintenance for a Harlan supplier in the late 90s. He spent months at a facility tied to your company, including Gary. He was not an executive. He was not on a donor list. He fixed machines, checked parts, and came home with work boots he cleaned on the back steps because my mother did not want oil on the kitchen floor. Richard's face tightened. I do not know every contractor from 30 years ago. I know you don't. Then why bring him into this? Because men like him are the reason companies like yours survived long enough for you to inherit them. Paul looked at the photograph. May I? Maya handed it to him. Paul studied it, then showed it to Mrs. Price. Mrs. Price nodded slowly. I remember that face. Not his name, but I remember seeing him at one of the supplier cookouts. Quiet man. Maya's voice remained steady. He was quiet. He believed if he worked hard and kept his head down, the company would do right by him. Richard folded his arms. And now we arrive at the real reason. This is about your father. No, Maya said. This is about what you learned from men like him and what you chose to forget. Vanessa took a breath, ready to step in, but Richard lifted one hand to stop her. He thought he had found firmer ground. So this is resentment, he said. After all this time, you are still angry about old family stories. Maya took the photograph back from Paul. My father was hurt on the job. No lawsuit, no headline, no big scene. My mother filled out forms, made calls, waited on hold, and got told the responsibility belonged to someone else. Harlan said it was the supplier. The supplier said it was the site manager. The site manager said paperwork was missing. By the time anyone finished passing blame, my mother was working extra shifts to keep the lights on. The ballroom stayed quiet. The camera kept recording, but no one seemed to care about the camera now. Richard said, "That has nothing to do with tonight's business. It has everything to do with how companies avoid responsibility. You cannot connect some old claim to this transaction. I am not connecting it. You are repeating it." Richard's voice hardened. "You want people to believe I am responsible for something that happened when I was a child. No. I want people to see how easy it is for a company to say workers matter until workers become expensive." Grace looked at her phone again. Maya. Maya did not turn. "What?" Lead counsel says the escrow initials on the slide may match a consulting entity used in prior Harlan vendor payments. Richard moved fast to the podium. "That is enough. Take that slide down." Vanessa raised the remote. Paul said, "Do not." Vanessa Frozi. Paul's voice carried. "That screen stays as it is." Richard looked at him. "You have no authority over Harlan documents." "I have authority over this room tonight," Paul said. "And I am not letting you erase something people are still trying to understand." Richard looked toward the camera operator. "Cut the feed." The camera operator hesitated. "Mr. Harlan, cut it." Maya looked at Richard. "Why? A few minutes ago you wanted everything recorded." Vanessa stepped in quickly. "Because this has become defamatory," Grace said. "Truthful questions are not defamation." Richard turned on her. "You do not have the truth." "Not all of it," Grace said. "But more than you expected." Vanessa's face had gone pale under the ballroom lights. She looked at Richard and spoke in a lower voice. "Richard, what consulting entity?" He did not answer her. Maya saw that. So did half the room. Richard tried to recover by returning to the old attack. "You see what she is doing, Vanessa? This is what Maya does. She drags people into guilt. Southside. Her father, her mother, old bills, old injuries, anything to make success look like theft." Maya placed the photograph back into her purse. "No, Richard. I am saying success built on hidden damage is not strength. You have no right to lecture me on strength. I worked 2 jobs while you built contacts in rooms where you pretended I did not matter. I know exactly what strength costs." That landed harder than she expected. Several of their old classmates looked at Richard. Some had heard rumors after the divorce. Few had heard Maya speak about it directly. Richard lowered his voice. "Careful." Maya looked at him. "You used that word when we were married." Grace stepped closer, but Maya held up one hand. Richard said, "This is not about our marriage. You made it about our marriage when you tried to label me a bitter ex-wife before anyone could question your documents." Vanessa looked at Richard again. "Is that why her name was removed?" Richard stared at Maya instead of answering. The room understood the silence. Grace's phone buzzed. She read the message and looked at Maya. They found another entity tied to Bexley. It received consulting fees from Harlan last quarter. Paul asked, "Who authorized the fees?" Grace looked at Richard. Richard slammed the folder closed. Not hard enough to damage anything, but hard enough to make the front tables flinch. "I will not stand here and let a reunion become an ambush," he said. Maya answered, "You are right about one thing. This is an ambush. You planned it for me. You just did not expect the paperwork to speak first." Richard's face changed. For the first time that night, he looked less angry than exposed. Vanessa stepped back from him by half a step. Maya looked around the room, then at the screen. "My father's story is not here to make you feel sorry for me. It is here because every person attached to Gary has a table somewhere, a family somewhere, a bill due somewhere. If you sell that plant through a structure you cannot explain, those families pay first." Mrs. Price lowered her head once. "That is the truth." Richard took the microphone again, but his hand was tense around it. "We are done with personal history. We are returning to business." Grace looked down at her phone and whispered to Maya, "Lead counsel is asking us to keep him on the record." Maya kept her eyes on Richard. "Then let him call it business." Richard looked at Maya for a long second. then turned back to the room as if he had made a decision everyone else was too emotional to understand. "All right," he said. "Since my integrity is being questioned in front of former classmates, donors, and local press, I will not hide behind corporate language." Vanessa turned toward him. "Richard." He lifted one hand without looking at her. "No. They wanted clarity. Let's give them clarity." Grace's phone was still in her hand. Maya saw another message arrive, but Grace did not open it yet. Her attention stayed on Richard's folder. Richard pulled several pages from the packet and placed them on the podium. "The Gary facility is included in a strategic asset transfer proposal." That is true. It is also true that the facility has been a financial burden for years. Mrs. Price spoke from the front. "A burden to whom?" Richard looked at her with controlled patience. "To the company, ma'am. And the workers are not the company?" Richard did not answer her directly. "Workers need a company that survives. Sentiment does not pay payroll." Maya stepped closer to the stage. "Neither does fraud." Vanessa's head turned sharply. "That is enough." Richard smiled, but his eyes stayed fixed on Maya. "No. Let her continue. Let everyone hear what this is really about." Maya kept her voice low. "This is about Gary. This is about a guest list changed after 5. This is about edited footage. This is about North Point, Bexley, and an escrow structure no one in this room can verify." Richard tapped the pages on the podium. "And this is about you, thinking you can stand in a room for 15 minutes and understand a company my family built over decades. You keep saying built," Maya said. "But tonight, you are talking about selling." Richard leaned toward the microphone. "I am talking about protecting." "Then protect Gary." He exhaled through his nose and looked toward the ceiling for half a second. "You still do not understand. Sometimes protecting the whole company means releasing one facility. You pair live. Releasing people," Maya said. "Releasing an asset." Paul Mercer looked down at the printed statement again. "Richard, if this is only a proposal, why does this document have signature blocks?" The room changed again. Several people who had stopped paying attention to the paperwork looked toward the podium. Vanessa moved fast. "Paul, that is a standard draft format." Paul held up the page. "It has tonight's date." Richard took the page from him. "Because the parties are ready to move." Maya looked at Grace. Grace had opened the new message now. She read it once, then again. Her face did not change, but her grip on the phone tightened. "What is it?" Maya asked quietly. Grace stepped closer. Final confirmation cleared. Maya held still. Grace added, almost without moving her lips, "Lead counsel is downstairs." Maya did not look toward the doors. "With whom?" "Board representative." "2 investigators." Maya took in the information without showing it. "Not yet." Grace nodded. "Not yet." Richard saw them speaking. "Do you 2 need a few more minutes to invent something else?" Grace put her phone at her side. "No. Keep going." Richard laughed once. "Gladly." Vanessa touched his sleeve again. "Richard, maybe we should take a short break and finish this with counsel present." He looked at her then. For the first time that night, annoyance crossed his face openly. Counsel reviewed the materials. "Company counsel." Richard did not answer fast enough. Maya said, "That silence keeps coming back." Richard pointed at her. "You do not get to question my counsel. I get to question a public signing of a plant transfer at a high school reunion. It is not your plant. Then why are you so afraid of my questions?" He stared at her, then turned toward the cameraman. "Are we still recording?" The cameraman looked uneasy. "Yes, sir." "Good," Vanessa whispered. "Richard, don't." He ignored her and picked up the silver pen from the podium. "This room deserves to see the difference between people who talk and people who make decisions." Paul stepped forward. "Richard, I am asking you as chair of this event. Do not sign anything on this stage." Richard did not look at him. "Paul, with respect, you run a reunion committee. I run a company." Paul's face hardened. "Tonight, you are standing in a room I am responsible for, and I am making a decision I am responsible for." Maya watched the pen in Richard's hand. She had seen him sign things before. Restaurant checks he wanted others to notice. Loan documents, he claimed, were investments. Divorce papers he sent through a lawyer because he did not want to sit across from her. He liked signatures. He liked the finality of ink. This one would be different. Grace's phone buzzed again. She glanced down and typed one sentence. He is about to sign. Richard laid the document flat. The heading read, Asset Transfer Acknowledgement and Preliminary Authorization. Under it were references to North Point Strategic Capital, selected Harlan assets, and the Gary manufacturing facility. Maya read enough from where she stood. Richard, she said, if you sign that without proper authority, you may be creating evidence against yourself. He looked up. That threat sounds rehearsed. It is not a threat. It is desperation. No, it is a warning. Vanessa took a step back from him. Richard, wait. That made the room notice her fear. Richard noticed it too and seemed to resent it. You said you wanted a strong announcement, he told her. I wanted control of the message, Vanessa said under her breath. Maya heard it. That part failed. Richard's face tightened. You think you have won something tonight because you asked a few questions? I think you should read the document before you sign it. I know what I am signing, Grace said. Do you know who has authority as of tonight? Richard turned on her. What does that mean? Grace did not answer. Maya also stayed silent. That silence pushed him harder than any accusation. Richard looked at the room. This is what manipulation looks like. Hints, half sentences, fear. They want everyone nervous, so no one trusts leadership. Mrs. Price said, people get nervous when leaders stop answering. Richard ignored her. He placed the pen tip on the signature line. Maya did not move to stop him. Grace did not speak. Paul said, Richard, do not do this here. Richard signed his name. The pen moved across the page in one clean motion. The camera captured it. Vanessa closed her eyes for a second. Grace looked toward the ballroom doors and sent one final text. Done. Richard lifted the page and held it up. There. That is leadership. No one applauded. The room stayed quiet, while Richard looked from table to table, waiting for the reaction he expected. It did not come. The people who had laughed at Maya earlier were now watching the signed page as if it had changed into something dangerous. Maya looked at the document, then at Richard. You should have waited, she said. Richard lowered the page. For what? The doors at the rear of the ballroom opened. 3 people entered first. Grace walked beside them, not ahead of them. A woman in a dark suit carried a leather portfolio against her chest. A man in his 60s followed with a board packet under one arm. Behind them came 2 plainclothes investigators, both calm, both showing identification only to hotel security and Paul Mercer as they stepped inside. No one rushed. No one raised a voice. That made the room pay closer attention. Richard lowered the signed page. What is this? The woman in the dark suit walked toward the stage. Richard Harlan. I'm Marjorie Ellis, lead counsel for Harlan Precision Tools. Richard stared at her. I know who you are. Good. Then you understand why I'm asking you to stop using company materials on that stage. Vanessa turned to Richard. Lead counsel? Richard did not answer her. His attention stayed on Marjorie. The older man beside Marjorie stepped forward. Calvin Brooks, board representative. Richard, step away from the podium. Richard laughed once, but no one joined him. Calvin, this is a reunion event. You are embarrassing yourself. Calvin looked at the signed page in Richard's hand. No, Richard. You did that when you signed a transfer acknowledgement in front of a camera. Richard lifted the document. This is preliminary. Marjorie held out her hand. Then, hand it to me. He kept it. This is a company document. That is exactly why I asked for it. The 2 investigators remained near the back of the room with hotel security. They did not approach the stage. One took notes. The other watched Richard and Vanessa without expression. Paul Mercer walked toward Marjorie. Miss Ellis, this event was not supposed to be used for a corporate signing. I understand, Marjorie said. We will need your cooperation, preserving the recording, the presentation file, the check-in tablet, and any printed materials distributed tonight. Paul nodded. You'll have it. Richard pointed toward him. Paul, do not hand over anything without knowing what you are doing. Paul looked back at him. I know exactly what I am doing. I am keeping my event from being turned into evidence that disappears. Vanessa spoke for the first time since Marjorie entered. Evidence of what? One of the investigators looked at her. That will depend on the documents. Vanessa's face changed. Who are you? The man showed his identification again. Illinois Financial Crimes Division. We are here to observe and preserve relevant materials. No one is under arrest. No one is being detained. We need the documents kept intact. Richard's voice rose. This is outrageous. Marjorie looked at him. Richard, lower your voice. I am the CEO of Harlan Precision Tools. Calvin answered before Marjorie could. You were. The words were quiet, but they moved through the room immediately. Richard stared at him. What did you say? Calvin opened the board packet. There was a change in authority effective earlier today. You were notified through proper channels. No, I was not, Marjorie said. Notice was delivered electronically to your corporate account, your personal counsel, and the registered office. Richard looked at Vanessa. Did you see anything? Vanessa shook her head slowly. No. Grace stood near Maya, but she did not speak. Maya kept her hands still on the back of the chair. Her face gave nothing away. Richard turned back to Marjorie. This is a tactic. It is a legal notice, Marjorie said. You cannot remove me from authority in the middle of an event. The timing of this event is not what controls company authority. Richard looked at the signed page again, then at the camera. For the first time, he seemed to understand that the camera he had brought had captured more than he intended. Marjorie stepped closer to the stage. You were instructed not to execute asset transfer documents after the close of authority. Richard's eyes narrowed. I signed a preliminary acknowledgement, Grace said. In front of local press. Richard turned sharply. Stay out of this, Grace. Marjorie looked at Grace. Miss Holloway, please send me the photos of the presentation slide and the time-stamped messages. Grace nodded. Already sent to the secure folder. Vanessa looked at Grace. You were working with them the whole time? Grace met her eyes. I started working when you changed the guest list. Vanessa opened her mouth, then closed it. Richard took one step down from the stage. No one changed anything illegally. Paul pointed toward the check-in table. Then the revision history will clear that up. Marjorie turned to Erica. Please do not access the tablet further. Hotel management will assist us in preserving it. Erica nodded, visibly relieved. Yes, ma'am. Richard turned toward the investigators. You have no right to interfere with a private corporate matter. The second investigator spoke. She had not said anything until then. Mr. Harlan, we are not interfering. We are documenting. You are free to speak with counsel before making any further statements. Richard's mouth tightened. I have counsel, Marjorie said. Company counsel represents the company. The distinction landed hard. Vanessa looked at Richard. Do you have personal counsel here? Richard ignored her. Maya watched him choose between anger and control. Control won for a moment. Calvin, Richard said. Whatever dispute exists can be handled Monday. I am not discussing board politics in front of former classmates. Calvin's answer was firm. This stopped being board politics when you attempted to sign a transfer document after authority changed. I did not attempt anything. I signed what I had every right to sign. Marjorie looked at the page in his hand. Then place it on the podium and step back. We need to preserve it in the condition it was signed. Richard hesitated. The entire room saw it. Mrs. Price spoke from the front. If it is proper, let them keep it. Richard looked at her as if he could not believe she had spoken again. Maya said. She asked the simplest question tonight. Richard turned on Maya. You think this is your victory? Maya did not move. I think you should listen to your lawyer. Marjorie corrected her gently. Company, lawyer. Maya nodded. Then listen to the company lawyer. That small correction made several people understand more than they had before. Richard was still standing at the podium, but the people who had entered the room were not treating him as the company anymore. Vanessa stepped away from him by another pace. Richard, what authority change? He looked at her. Not now. Yes, now. You told me the partnership was ready. You told me counsel cleared the message. You told me Maya was trying to disrupt the announcement. Marjorie looked at Vanessa. Miss Cole, Did you prepare the press release sent at 6:12 p.m.? Vanessa swallowed. Based on materials I was given. By Mr. Harlan. She looked at Richard. Richard snapped. Do not answer without counsel. Vanessa's face went pale. I need counsel? No one answered for her. Grace's expression did not soften, but her voice did. Vanessa, stop talking. For once. Vanessa listened. Calvin stepped closer to Richard. Place the signed document down. Richard looked at the document again. The signature was there, large and confident across the bottom line. The same signature he had raised to the room seconds earlier as proof of leadership now looked like something he wanted to fold away. Marjorie spoke carefully. Richard, do not remove that document from the stage. He said it on the podium. The investigator at the back made a note. Paul exhaled. The cameraman looked toward Vanessa, unsure whether to continue. Marjorie noticed. Keep that recording preserved, she said. Do not delete, edit, export, or transmit it until instructed. The cameraman nodded quickly. Yes, ma'am. Richard looked at Maya again. You planned this, Maya answered. No. You planned the room. Grace preserved what happened in it. Grace did not look away from Richard. And you signed. Richard's face tightened. Signed what? A preliminary paper? A harmless acknowledgement? Marjorie opened her portfolio and removed a document. That is exactly what we are here to determine. But the timing matters. The authority change matters. The transfer structure matters. The North Point entity matters. The escrow references matter. And the Gary facility matters. The room stayed silent. Richard looked from Marjorie to Calvin to the investigators. Who authorized this? Marjorie glanced once toward Maya, then back to Richard. Effective 5 o'clock this evening, she said. Control of Harlan. Precision Tools changed hands. Richard stared at Marjorie as if she had used the wrong name for his own company. That is impossible, he said. Marjorie opened the document in her hand. It is not impossible. It is completed. Calvin Brooks took a step forward. The board received final notice at 5:03 p.m. The voting control transfer was acknowledged. The emergency authority resolution became active immediately after. Richard looked from Calvin to Marjorie. I am chairman and CEO. You were CEO, Calvin said. The chair authority was suspended pending review. Richard's face changed. Pending review of what? Marjorie looked at the signed page on the podium. Among other things, attempted transfer of selected company assets after your authority ended. Vanessa turned slowly toward Richard. You told me everything was approved. Richard did not look at her. This is a board fight. That is all it is. One of the investigators near the back spoke calmly. Mr. Harlan, the board matter is separate from our review. We are here because of possible financial crimes involving related entities and asset movement. Richard pointed toward Maya. This is her doing. The room followed his hand. Maya stood beside table 17. Still, composed, her purse on the chair next to her. She did not step forward. She did not deny it. That silence brought more attention to her than any speech could have. Richard noticed. No, don't stand there like you don't know what this is. Tell them. Marjorie answered for her. Miss Williams is not required to answer your questions. Richard's eyes moved sharply to Marjorie. Why would you say that? Marjorie closed the document. Because you are no longer speaking to a former spouse with no standing. The room held its breath. Vanessa whispered. What does that mean? Richard's voice dropped. Who bought the control block? Marjorie looked at Maya. That small movement told the room before the words did. Richard saw it. And for the first time all night, he had no prepared expression ready. Marjorie said, The controlling owner is Maya Williams. No one spoke. The camera operator kept filming until Vanessa turned and stared at him. He did not lower the camera. He looked too stunned to move. Richard gave a short laugh that sounded unfinished. That is not funny. It is not intended to be, Marjorie said. Calvin opened his packet and removed a copy of the notice. The transaction closed at 5 o'clock. Control passed through a restructuring entity with board-approved emergency provisions. The documents are valid. The notice was served. Your authority to sign asset transfers ended before you took this stage. Richard looked at Maya. You bought my company? Maya finally stepped forward. I bought control of Harlan Precision Tools. My family's company. The workers' company, too. His face flushed. You used a shell? Grace spoke from beside Marjorie. No. Richard. North Point is the shell we are worried about. Maya's fund disclosed beneficial ownership to the board, lenders, and council before the transfer closed. Richard turned to Grace. You knew. I confirmed tonight, Grace said. After you changed the list. Vanessa took a step back. Wait. The mystery fund. Marjorie looked at her. The valid transaction was not North Point. North Point is under review. The valid transaction was the control transfer that stopped further asset movement. Richard shook his head. The board would never approve her. Calvin's voice stayed steady. The board approved the transaction because the alternative was allowing assets to be moved through a structure we could not verify. That is a lie. It is in the record, Calvin said. Richard looked around the room, searching for support. He found people watching him, not Maya. Some looked shocked. Some looked embarrassed. Mrs. Price had one hand pressed to the top of a chair. Paul Mercer stood near the check-in table with his arms at his sides, as if he had just watched a different story step out from behind the one Richard had been telling. Richard pointed at Maya again. You did this for revenge. No, Maya said. If it were revenge, I would have let you sell Gary and then watched your name collapse under the paperwork. That is ridiculous. I bought Harlan because you were ready to sell the people who kept it alive longer than you did. His mouth tightened. You think owning papers makes you Harlan? No. I think owning control gives me responsibility. That is more than you showed tonight. Vanessa looked at Richard. You told me Maya was trying to embarrass you because of the divorce. Richard turned toward her. She is. Marjorie interrupted. Miss Cole, I recommend you stop making public statements about motive until you have counsel. Vanessa looked as if she might speak anyway, then stopped. Maya kept her attention on Richard. You stood on that stage and called Gary a non-core asset. You called workers a burden. You used edited footage and a changed guest list to make people doubt me before they could hear the right questions. You thought if I looked small enough, nobody would listen. Richard's jaw tightened. You are enjoying this. No, Maya said. That is what you still do not understand. Grace moved closer, but Maya did not need help. Maya continued. I did not come here to take your name. I did not buy control because I wanted to stand in a ballroom and watch your face change. I bought it because 312 people in Gary should not find out on Monday morning that their lives were moved through a document no one could explain. Mrs. Price wiped one eye with her fingers and looked away. Richard saw it and tried one last turn. You are making promises you cannot keep. You do not know the debt. You do not know the vendor pressure. You do not know how close we were to collapse. Maya answered without hesitation. I know the debt. I know the vendor pressure. I know about the delayed maintenance reports, the insurance concerns, the consulting fees, the escrow references, and the 2 sets of projections prepared for different audiences. Vanessa looked at Richard. 2 sets? Richard did not answer. Grace said, one for the board, one for North Point. Calvin looked at Richard. That is part of the review. Richard gripped the edge of the podium. Every CEO prepares scenarios. Scenarios do not usually remove liabilities from one version, Grace said. The investigator near the back made another note. Richard saw it and straightened. I am not saying another word without counsel. Marjorie nodded. That is wise. Maya looked at the signed page on the podium. Preserve the document. Marjorie glanced at her. Already underway. The room heard the authority in that exchange. It was not loud. It was not dramatic. It did not need to be. For the first time that night, Maya's words did not need permission from anyone in the room. Richard heard it too. You planned to let me sign, he said. Maya met his eyes. You chose to sign. You baited me. I warned you. Grace looked at Richard. On camera, Paul Mercer turned to the cameraman. That recording stays with hotel management until counsel collects it. The cameraman nodded. Yes, sir. Vanessa slowly removed the press statement from the side table and looked at the headline she had prepared earlier. Harlan Precision Tools announces Strategic Rescue Partnership. Her hand trembled slightly. Maya saw it. Vanessa, Did you know about the guest list change? Vanessa looked at Richard before answering. I was told there was a concern with your invitation. That is not what I asked. Vanessa looked down. I approved the final list upload, Grace said. At 5:12, Vanessa's voice lowered. Yes, Richard snapped. Vanessa, she turned to him. You told me she was coming to disrupt you, Maya said. And you believed him because it helped the story. Vanessa did not defend herself. Marjorie stepped between the stage and the room. We are going to end the corporate portion of this event now. All Harlan materials must remain in the room until collected. Mr. Harlan, you should contact personal counsel before making further statements. Miss Cole, that applies to you as well. Richard looked at Maya one more time. His anger had not disappeared, but something else had entered it. Confusion, fear, the sudden knowledge that the old way he spoke to her no longer matched the room he was standing in. You were standing on a stage built by people you were ready to abandon, Maya said. That is the legacy everyone saw tonight. No one applauded. No one needed to. For several seconds, the only movement in the ballroom came from Marjorie collecting the signed page, Grace sending one more message, and Richard watching the company he thought still answered to him move out of his hands. Marjorie placed the signed page inside a clear evidence sleeve and handed it to one of the investigators. Richard watched the movement as if the document still belonged to him because his name was on it. That paper is not evidence of anything, he said. It is a preliminary acknowledgement. The female investigator stepped forward, not close enough to threaten, only close enough to be heard. Mr. Harlan, no finding has been made tonight. No charge is being announced in this room, but the document is relevant to an active financial review. Richard seized on the careful wording. So you admit there is no finding. We are preserving records, she said. That includes the signed acknowledgement, the presentation file, the press release, the guest list revision, and any communications related to North Point Strategic Capital, Bexley Administrative Services, and the Gary facility. Vanessa sat down slowly at the nearest table. She still held one of the printed press statements, folded now at the corner. The headline she had written was visible between her fingers. Richard looked at Marjorie. You are letting state investigators walk into a private corporate matter based on speculation from Grace and my ex-wife, Calvin Brooks answered. This did not start with Grace. It started with missing money, delayed disclosures, and two different versions of the same financial report. The room reacted quietly. That was the first time anyone from the board had said it so plainly. Richard turned toward him. Careful, Calvin. Calvin opened his board packet. No. The company has been careful for months. Too careful. We asked for corrected debt schedules in June. We asked for vendor payment explanations in July. We asked for the Gary maintenance reserve breakdown twice. We were given partial answers, then revised answers, then excuses. That was finance, Richard said. Ask the CFO. Marjorie looked at him. The CFO produced emails, showing your office directed what to include and what to hold back. Richard's face tightened. Every CEO manages messaging. Grace stepped closer. Financial reports are not messaging. He looked at her with open contempt. You have enjoyed this all night. Grace did not flinch. No, I have been documenting it. The male investigator looked toward the screen. Please keep the transfer structure slide displayed until our technician arrives. Do not disconnect the laptop. The event volunteer near the projector nodded quickly and stepped away from the controls. Paul Mercer walked to the side table and began collecting the printed statements from guests who offered them. If you received one, please hand it over, he said. Do not throw it away. Vanessa looked up. Paul, I prepared those for media distribution. Paul looked at her. That is why they matter. Richard turned on him. You are not an investigator. No, Paul said. I am a man who knows when he was used. Vanessa lowered her eyes. Maya had not moved from table 17. She watched the room reorganize itself around facts instead of Richard's voice. It did not feel like victory. It felt like a mess that had finally been pulled into view. Richard pointed toward Maya. You used my company's weak moment to take control. That is what this is, Maya answered. Your company's weak moment came from what you hid. The market hid nothing. Costs went up. Contracts slowed. Customers delayed payment. You think every hard quarter is a crime because it helps your little speech about workers. Maya walked a few steps closer, stopping short of the stage. A hard quarter is not a crime. A shell entity receiving consulting fees for no clear service is a question. A Texas mailbox tied to a Delaware company is a question. 2 sets of projections are a question. Signing an asset transfer after your authority ended is a question. Richard looked at Marjorie. Are you going to let her talk like she is counsel? Marjorie said, she is the controlling owner. She may ask questions. You may choose not to answer without counsel. The phrase controlling owner struck him again. His mouth tightened, as if the words had a taste he could not tolerate. Calvin turned to the investigators. For the room's understanding, can you explain what happens now? The female investigator nodded. We will request preservation of all relevant financial records, communications, transaction drafts, board notices, vendor agreements, and payment records tied to the entities named tonight. This is a legal hold. No one should delete emails, alter files, destroy notes, or move company documents. She looked at Richard, then Vanessa, then the event staff. This does not mean anyone has been convicted of anything. It means the records must remain intact. Richard said, I know what a legal hold is. Then comply with it, she said. Grace checked her phone again. Marjorie, I sent the file path for the press statement and a screenshot of the 6/12 timestamp. Marjorie nodded. Received. Vanessa looked at Grace. You had access to that? Grace looked at her. No. You distributed it. The timestamp is in the file metadata. Vanessa closed her eyes for a second. Richard noticed and snapped. Do not let them scare you. Communications drafts are not crimes. Vanessa opened her eyes. You told me North Point was vetted. It was. By whom? Richard did not answer. Maya watched Vanessa's face. The certainty that had carried her through the first half of the night had broken into something smaller. She was still responsible for what she had done, but she was beginning to understand she had been useful to Richard in a way she had not expected. Calvin turned to Richard. The board has authorized immediate suspension of your executive authority pending full review. Richard stared at him. You cannot suspend what my family founded. The company's bylaws can, Calvin said. And did. I built relationships you people could never replace. Marjorie said. You are being removed for cause from active management while the review proceeds. Richard stepped back as if the words had pushed him physically, though no one had touched him. For cause? Calvin read from the paper in his hand. Failure to disclose material liabilities. Unauthorized pursuit of asset transfer. Inconsistent internal reporting. Payments to related entities without sufficient documentation. Failure to notify the board of transaction timing. Attempted execution after authority change. Richard's voice rose. Alleged. Say alleged. Calvin looked at him. Pending review. But your authority is suspended now. The room heard the difference. Richard had not been convicted. He had not been arrested. But he had been stopped. Richard looked at Maya with anger that had nowhere else to go. You think you can run Harlan because you bought votes on paper? Maya answered. No. I think people who tell the truth should run it with me watching closely. You do not know the machines. You do not know the contracts. I know enough to start by not selling Gary through North Point. He laughed bitterly. You will learn. The first payroll crisis will teach you. The first angry vendor will teach you. The first lender call will teach you. Maybe, Maya said. But I will take those calls without hiding them from the board. Paul handed another stack of press statements to the investigator. Mrs. Price remained standing near the front, her eyes on Maya now, not Richard. Richard turned to the room. Do you all hear this? She is promising what cannot be promised. She will destroy what my name built. Maya looked at him steadily. Your name is on the door. The workers are what kept it standing. No one spoke for a moment after that. Richard's face changed again. The statement had gone to a place his arguments could not reach. He could fight over documents, titles, filings, and authority. He could not make the people in that room forget the word workers after everything he had said about Gary. Marjorie closed her portfolio. Mr. Harlan, you should leave the stage and contact personal counsel. Richard looked at the podium, the screen, the missing document, Vanessa seated alone, Calvin standing with the board packet, the investigators taking notes, Grace holding the phone, and Maya beside table 17 with the old purse still on the chair. For the first time all night, he seemed to understand that there was no microphone left that could save him. Vanessa sat at the nearest table with the folded press statement in front of her. For several minutes, she did not speak. She watched Marjorie label documents, Paul collect printed copies, and Grace send file after file from her phone. Then she looked at Richard as if she were seeing him without the role he had given himself. "You told me she was desperate," Vanessa said. Richard turned. "Not now. You told me she was coming here to cause a scene. She did cause a scene." Vanessa looked around the ballroom. "No, Richard, you built one." He took a step toward her. "Do not do this in front of everyone." She gave a short, bitter laugh. "That is what you say now?" The room stayed quiet. No one pretended to talk over them. The reunion had become a room of witnesses, and everybody knew it. Richard lowered his voice. "Vanessa, you are upset. Sit with me for 5 minutes. We will handle this." "I have been sitting here with your press statement in my hand," she said. "I wrote words about stability, trust, and leadership because you told me the company needed confidence. You told me the deal was clean. You told me counsel cleared it. You told me the board was slow, not suspicious." Richard looked toward Marjorie. "Anything I told you came from legitimate business discussions," Marjorie said. "Mr. Harlan, I recommend you stop." He ignored her. "Vanessa, listen to me. They are using you to get to me." Maya watched Vanessa's face. The woman who had held the microphone so confidently at the start of the night now looked smaller, not because anyone had insulted her, but because she was beginning to understand the part she had played. "You used me first," Vanessa said. Richard's face hardened. "Be careful." Vanessa looked down at her hand. The engagement ring caught the ballroom light. She stared at it for a moment, then slowly pulled it from her finger. Richard's expression changed. "Vanessa." She placed the ring on the white tablecloth beside the folded press release. The sound was small, but the room heard it. "You did not lose this company because of Maya," she said. "You lost it because you thought everyone in this room was too easy to manage. You thought Paul would care more about donors than truth. You thought Grace would stay quiet because you dismissed her as paperwork. You thought Maya would either run or explode. You thought I would keep smiling as long as you called it strategy." Richard looked at the ring, then at her. "Do not embarrass me like this." Vanessa's eyes lifted. "You built a stage to embarrass your ex-wife. Do not complain because the lights stayed on." A few people looked away, not out of respect for Richard, but because the truth had become too direct to watch comfortably. Calvin Brooks stepped to Marjorie's side. "Richard, this event needs to end for you." Richard turned on him. "You are not removing me from a public room." "No one is removing you," Calvin said. "We are asking you to leave the stage area and contact counsel." Paul Mercer nodded to 2 hotel security staff near the doors. They did not come forward aggressively. They simply stood where guests could see them, hands folded, waiting. Richard looked at them and laughed under his breath. "So now I am being escorted out of a reunion I helped pay for," Paul answered. "You are being asked to leave because you used it for something it was never meant to be." Richard pointed toward the side table. "I paid for half the production, and that is being documented too," Paul said. Vanessa did not pick up the ring again. She pushed the press statement away from her and stood. "Do not call me tonight." Richard stared at her. "You are making a mistake." "No," she said. "I helped you make one. I am done adding to it." She stepped away from him and walked toward Marjorie. "I will cooperate. I want my own counsel before I answer anything detailed." Marjorie nodded. "That is appropriate." Richard watched her as if betrayal had arrived from the wrong direction. Then his anger turned back to Maya. "You waited for this," he said. Maya stood beside table 17, her purse now in her hand. "No, you sat there and watched it happen. I warned you before you signed. You knew what would happen. I knew what might happen if you kept choosing the same direction." Richard came down from the stage, stopping several feet from her. Hotel security looked at Paul, but Paul shook his head once. Richard was angry, but he was not being physical. The room stayed alert. "How long?" Richard asked. "How long have you been waiting to humiliate me?" Maya looked at him for a moment. "Not as long as you spent doing it to yourself." His face tightened. "You think that sounds noble?" "No. I think it sounds accurate." Grace stepped closer, but Maya did not need her to intervene. Richard's voice dropped. "You bought your way into my life again." Maya shook her head. "I bought control of a company that needed someone to stop you from stripping it. My name is still on that company. For now." The words landed quietly. Richard looked at her as if he wanted to argue, but every argument he had used tonight had already been answered by documents, witnesses, and his own signature. Mrs. Price spoke from the front. "Go home, Richard." He looked at her, stunned by the simplicity of it. No one laughed. No one clapped. A few people lowered their eyes. Others watched him with the silence people reserve for a man whose own choices have finally reached him. Richard turned away from Maya and walked toward the rear doors. He did not look at Vanessa. She did not look at him. As he passed the table where she had placed the ring, his eyes dropped to it for less than a second, but he kept walking. At the doors, he paused and looked back at the room. "This company will regret this," he said. Calvin answered. "The company already regrets enough." Richard left with hotel security walking several steps behind him, not touching him, not rushing him, only making sure the evening did not turn into another performance. When the doors closed, the ballroom remained still. People looked toward Maya now. Some expected a speech. Some expected anger. Some expected her to claim the moment in the same public way Richard had tried to claim it from her. Maya did none of that. She walked to the table where Vanessa's ring sat beside the press release. She did not touch the ring. She picked up one copy of the printed statement, read the first line, and placed it back down. Then she looked at Marjorie. "Make sure the Gary documents are separated first." Marjorie nodded. Already marked priority. Grace stood beside Maya. "Are you all right?" Maya looked toward the doors where Richard had left. "No one is all right yet." Paul approached carefully. "Maya, I owe you an apology. This happened in my room. You did not change the list," Maya said. "I should have stopped it sooner." "You stopped it when it mattered." Mrs. Price came forward and took Maya's hand between both of hers. "Do not let them turn those workers into paperwork." Maya held her hand gently. "I won't." The room finally began to move again, but it did not return to what it had been. People gathered their coats slowly. Some handed statements to Paul. Some went to Grace with videos from their phones. Vanessa stood alone near Marjorie, waiting to give her name and contact information. Maya looked at the stage one last time. The screen still showed the transfer structure Richard had wanted hidden behind polished words. The podium still held the mark of his hand on the papers. The microphone was off. Grace followed Maya's eyes. "They are waiting for you to say something." Maya picked up her purse. "Not here." "You sure?" "Yes. Richard wanted this room. Gary is where the answer belongs." Marjorie finished marking the last packet and gave quiet instructions to hotel management. Paul Mercer kept the side table organized, separating press statements, guest videos, and the printed copies Richard had distributed. The investigator spoke with him briefly, then with the event technician, then with the camera operator. No one raised a voice. No one needed to. The evening had already said enough. Maya stood near table 17 with Grace beside her. For the first time all night, no one was pointing a camera at her face. People were looking at her now, but differently. Some looked ashamed. Some looked curious. Some looked as if they wanted to apologize but did not know where to begin. Mrs. Price came back to Maya and squeezed her hand once. "You said Gary is where the answer belongs." "It is," Maya said. "Then tell them before this room turns your silence into another story." Maya looked toward the stage. The microphone had been turned off, but it still stood there, waiting. Richard had used it to accuse her. Vanessa had used it to frame her. Maya did not want the room, but she understood Mrs. Price was right. If she left without saying anything, people would fill the space with guesses. She walked to the front, stopped beside the podium, and did not stand behind it. She faced the room from the floor. "I will keep this brief," she said. The room settled. "Gary will not be sold through the transaction Richard tried to sign tonight. There will be no layoffs from that illegal or unauthorized deal. On Monday morning, the board will meet with worker representatives before any further action is taken. A few people exhaled audibly. Mrs. Price closed her eyes for a second. Maya continued. There will be a safety review, an insurance review, and a maintenance review. If reports were delayed or altered, we will find out. If workers were left in uncertainty because management wanted time to move assets first, that ends now. Grace stood near the front table with her phone lowered. Maya looked across the room. I am not promising that hard decisions will disappear. That would be dishonest. But I am promising this. No decision about Gary will be hidden behind a press statement, a changed guest list, or a staged announcement. The people who work there will hear the truth before cameras do. An older woman near the back stood. Maya recognized her after a moment. Mrs. Helen Watkins, one of their former teachers, had been sitting quietly all evening. That is the first honest thing said from the front of this room tonight, Mrs. Watkins said. She began to clap. It was not loud at first. Then Mrs. Price joined her. Then Paul. Then a few tables. The applause spread. Uneven and emotional. Not like celebration, but like relief after people had watched something wrong go too far. Maya did not smile for it. She nodded once, accepted it, and stepped away from the front. Grace came to her side. You did enough. Not yet. Marjorie approached. Maya, we can handle the immediate legal work from here. The documents are secured. The notice to the board is complete. The legal hold goes out tonight. Send a separate notice to Gary management, Maya said. No personnel changes, no equipment transfers, no vendor cancellations without written approval. Already drafted, Marjorie said. I'll send it within the hour. And the worker representatives? I will request a Monday meeting. No, Maya said. Confirm it. Marjorie nodded. I'll confirm it. Vanessa stood near the side wall with her coat over one arm. Her ring still lay on the table where she had left it. She looked at Maya, but did not approach it first. Then, she walked over slowly. Maya, she said, I owe you an apology. Maya looked at her. You owe the investigators the truth first. Vanessa accepted that. I'll give it. Then start there. Vanessa nodded, picked up her ring from the table, and closed her hand around it. She did not put it back on. Maya turned toward Grace. Where is Richard? Outside the ballroom. Near the elevators. Security is keeping distance. I need to leave. Grace grabbed her coat. I'll walk with you. They moved through the ballroom while people stepped aside. No one stopped Maya. No one asked for a picture. No one tried to restart the night. At the doors, Paul touched Maya's shoulder lightly. I am sorry, he said. I know. I should have seen it sooner. Next time, believe the person being isolated before the room finishes deciding. Paul lowered his eyes. I will. Maya and Grace stepped into the hallway. Richard was standing near the elevator bank, one hand holding his phone, the other pressed against his forehead. When he saw Maya, he straightened. Maya, he said, please, we need to talk. She kept walking. Maya. Grace looked at her. Do you want me to call Marjorie? No. Richard followed a few steps, then stopped when hotel security shifted closer. You cannot just take everything and walk away. Maya stopped, but she did not turn fully toward him. I did not take everything. I stopped you from moving what was not yours to hide. You know what this will do to me? She looked at him then. You asked that too late. His mouth opened, but no answer came. Maya turned away and continued down the hallway with Grace. Outside, the October air was cold enough to make people pull their coats tighter. The streets were still wet. Downtown Chicago had thinned out, but taxis and rideshare cars still passed the hotel entrance. Grace pulled out her phone. I can take you home, she said. Maya looked east, then south, then toward the road out of the city. No. Gary. Now? Yes. You have been standing through this for hours. So have the people waiting to hear if they still have jobs. Grace studied her face. Then, I'm driving. Maya did not argue. They left the Palmer house behind and headed for the expressway. For several minutes, neither woman spoke. Grace kept both hands on the wheel. Maya sat in the passenger seat with Ruth's purse in her lap and her phone open to a list of names Marjorie had sent. Plant manager, union representative, safety lead, Interim finance officer, board liaison. An old soul song came through the radio. Maya recognized it from Saturday mornings when her mother used to clean before her hospital shift. She let it play. They stopped once for gas station coffee. Grace bought 2 cups and handed one to Maya without asking how she took it. Maya drank it black because there was no time to fix it, and because she needed the heat more than the taste. By the time they reached Gary, the sky had begun to lighten. The Harlan Precision Tools sign stood above the front gate. The parking lot was mostly empty, but a few early cars were already there. Men and women would start arriving soon. Some with lunch bags, some with coffee, some thinking Monday might bring bad news they could not afford. Maya stepped out of the car and stood at the gate with Ruth's purse still in her hand. Grace came beside her. "What are you thinking?" Maya looked at the building, the locked doors, the security lights, and the sign with Richard's family name on it. "I'm thinking I did not buy back the past," she said. "I bought the chance to make sure people here are not thrown away the way my family once was." Grace nodded. "Where do we start?" Maya looked toward the guard booth as the first worker's headlights turned into the lot. With the truth, a factory whistle sounded somewhere beyond the gate. Maya stood still and listened. Some people wanted justice to sound like applause. Maya had learned it could sound like a factory whistle still blowing on Monday morning. The lesson of Maya's story is that dignity should never depend on where someone comes from, what others say about them, or how loudly powerful people try to control the truth. Real strength is not revenge. Real strength is standing firm, protecting people who cannot protect themselves, and letting the facts speak when others build lies around you. Maya did not fight to humiliate Richard. She fought so the workers in Gary would not be treated like numbers on a page. Thank you for listening to this story all the way to the end. Your time means a lot to this channel. If this story touched you, please let us know what you thought about the way it was told. Your feedback helps us make every story stronger, clearer, and more meaningful. And if you have a powerful true story, a family lesson, or an experience you believe should be shared, please send it to the channel. Your story might be the next one that helps someone feel seen, understood, and less alone. This video is a work of fiction created with the assistance of artificial intelligence. All characters, events, and situations are not real and do not represent any actual people or true stories. The content is intended for storytelling and emotional illustration only.